Oh, welcome to Spindle City Straight Talk. I'm Chip,
And I'm CJ.
and it is Friday in the Riv, TGIF, and another crazy weekend. So let's be.
Hey, it's tax-free weekend. Let's not forget.
That's
It's
right.
tax-free
Everybody
weekend.
go out and buy as much as you can because it's the only time they won't tax you. Believe me, they will. They will tax you to the up to your ears. And when you and even, no matter how much surplus they have, they'll never give you any of it back. This is the few times. This is the one or two times they give it back, only to help their friends who own the businesses. Not really because they like you. So that's it. But let's start something with a little deja vu karma. Um, I guess I guess they finally did pick it up at WSAR, but a former employee of theirs was basically, and I will read you this verbatim. Former South Coast Talk radio host and journalist sentenced for indecent and physical assault on a child. And I don't know if you read the article, but this is some pretty heinous stuff.
I read it.
It was pretty heinous what he did, and but I find an irony in this because if you remember correctly, this is the guy that when they ambushed when we were fighting against the debt override, and you know that we're never allowed on WSAR, we're blocked
Right.
all the time, but they invited me on to say a thing, and they gave me like a 5 minute segment in which he interrupted me for 4 minutes. They taped it and they basically didn't let me talk. And then they kept running it saying, see, they don't know what they're talking about. And, of course, we squelched that on our show when we did have time to speak because they wouldn't let me give the stats. They wouldn't let me. So, and then he closed by again doing that, what a lot of these people do when they have no argument. It's about the kids. It's about the kids. I see the irony in that statement now, based on what he has been charged with. So it shows that their hypocrisy knows no bounds. And frankly, I'm disappointed with the sentence.
So am I.
I am very disappointed with the sentence because this
Two
is
years
public
worth of
record. So I
service.
might as well read a little bit of this just to see if the rest of our viewers are disappointed with the sentence. So I will read you this. Former radio talk show personality and newspaper editor Rick Oliveira has been convicted of indecently assaulting and physically assaulting a preteen, uh, close female relative, and will serve jail time. Oliveira, 53, was convicted by a jury on charges of indecent assault and battery on a person under the age of 14 in assault and battery, according to the Bristol County uh, District Attorney Thomas Quinn. Oliveira was formerly a longtime talk show host and general manager at WSAR AM in Somerset, and was a journalist and publisher of the O Jornal Portuguese language newspaper in Fall River. Quinn said that during the trial, the victim testified that the abuse began when she was 8 years old, and Oliveira entered the bedroom in Swansea seeking comfort during the storm. She testified that once inside, he sexually molested her. Then she testified that 2 years after that punished her for throwing out his cigarettes by dragging her around by the hair. And then it talks about in the victim's impact statement that she read to the court this afternoon. She stated that she had suffered through years of anxiety and depression as a result of what that defendant did to her. She still had fears walking alone on the street, and that happened to her. Prosecution requested, the physical damage, et cetera, et cetera. But this is the thing that disturbs me. They asked for the maximum sentence of 2.5 years in jail for the indecent assault conviction and an additional year for the physical assault charge. So they're looking at 3.5 years. But Judge Cynthia Beckett sentenced Oliveira to two years in the House of Correction with 1 year to serve, and the balance suspended for 3 years if Oliveira violates the terms of his eventual release or commits a new crime. To me, for what, and I didn't read everything in the article, so you can read it. You can go to WBSM's website or go to WBSM app, and they have it on there. So you can read the article yourself. But I mean, there's nothing more reprehensible than this. I don't know. Any judge that doesn't give the maximum sentence to somebody who does things like this should be taken off the bench and thrown in jail themselves. And that's my personal opinion. So that was that. You know, I had to talk about that. So I mean, it's well, I'm having trouble here. Yeah, he gets a year to serve. You know, and the only thing we can hope is that, you know, one thing about you worked in the prison system, CJ. You know that you know, even though they're criminals, they do have kind of a code, and part of that code is they're not real welcoming to pedophiles.
No, they're not. Usually they get placed in protective custody. So it's always interesting. But oh wow. Agreed, Chip. A female judge at that.
Yeah. Well, yeah, like I said, it just, I mean, you know, to me, look, the punishment should suit the crime. You know, when they give people 10 years in jail for stealing a loaf of bread, because of, you know, like they have, I mean, they even wrote a play on it. Les Miserables is about a policeman that chased a guy around for his entire life. Jean Valjean, and that was one of the best plays ever, Les Miserables. But for stealing a loaf of bread when his daughter and he was starving. But then you get something like this, and they give him a year, a year to serve, dragging a kid around the house by the hair, assaulting an 8-year-old. I mean, I don't know. Maybe there's, you know, maybe it's my moral compass that's off, but I think that, you know, I still agree with Hammurabi's code. You get Hammurabi's code, as you well know, CJ, is he gave you whatever you got, whatever you did.
That's right.
You know, if you built a building that collapsed and killed somebody, they drop a giant boulder on you.
That's it. That's it.
You know, if you murdered somebody, they executed you. So, I mean, this stuff you see all the time. You know, you get these movie stars and stuff, they get a slap on a wrist, and then you get some average person and they throw the book at them.
Well, what's interesting in this sentence is there's no reference to listing him on the sexual offenders list. Have you noticed that?
Yeah, and I thought that was mandatory in the law.
So did I.
But you know something? I'm just thinking of this. The charge, maybe that charge, because of the way it was worded, you know, I don't know. But I thought, and I'm not an attorney, you know, we don't try to, you know, I thought that when you get convicted of child molestation, I mean, I know there are categories too, but you have to be put on a registry. I don't understand it. There's nothing in that article about him being put on a registry. And it's just horrible. It's horrible. I mean, stuff like this, you know, between, you know, animal cruelty and cruelty to children and stuff like that. It's just, you know, it's one of my buttons you don't want to push because, you know, if they gave me 5 minutes in a room with them, he'd find out what the you know, because I'm telling you, this I mean, it disturbed the hell out of me. And it took a very, very long time to get this thing to trial. Remember when these allegations were first made?
Yeah.
It was a while ago.
Right. Because the
And to
child
let
is
this
now an
guy
adult.
loose, let this guy loose. If he did it to one child, he may have done it to somebody else.
And remember, that victim is now an adult.
That's right. And an adult that's messed up psychologically because
Right.
and may never be right. They're going to suffer their entire lives with the trauma that this waste of oxygen perpetrated on them. So, so let's move on. So since we're on WBSM, were you aware? I got a call yesterday that Sutter was on WBSM.
Yes, I heard that.
Talking about that New Bedford case that they're trying to make traction with.
Right.
Because since they got nothing to campaign on and what they've done for the people, they're trying to do something. And I guess he really kind of said, look, everything that lawyer did in that civil case, what he said after the case is kind of a lie. The officer wasn't stabbed. He said the officer went to the emergency room. He was treated for a stab wound. They had pictures of the bloody knife when they went on criminal charges. So it's all, this is all. And I heard, actually, I don't know if you heard it, but they said there were picketers outside BSM when he was there. So, maybe I'm a conspiracy theorist at heart, but I think this is political. This is all political. Why is it coming up now? They're trying to make this into an issue. This thing's been adjudicated. We talked about it. There's a far different level on a civil case, a threshold, than there are in a criminal case. So the criminal case was adjudicated. He actually didn't even prosecute it. He was DA, and he said, I think on our show when we asked him that he had put his two best prosecutors on it. And we all know that these civil cases, especially when it's against the city, they're settled. Even if the city could ultimately win the case, they don't want the bad publicity. They don't want to drag it out in court because they're politicians. They settle. How many times have we seen the city settle on cases with people when the individuals could have lost the case? Because why? We all know the politics. They know about stuff that's happened in the city that they don't want leaked, because we all know that. That's what happens. How many times have we done that? Look at Malone. They buried that so deep you still can't dig it out. We still have never gotten the complete facts of that case. And all the different issues, the American disabilities thing, the age discrimination, the sexual harassment, and the specifics of that. We never did get it. Why? I'm sure Malone had a couple things on some of the people involved too, and some deals that they made. So that's just a problem. This is the problem with politicians. That's why you've got to remember what Mark Twain, Samuel Clemens said so aptly. Politicians are like diapers. They should be changed often and for the same reason, because they're full of crap. But I thought it was amazing that they had pickets there. So that this was a setup from the get-go.
Well, according to Jeff Pedro, no, they were there to support him on Wednesday show.
Oh.
I listened to him. I listened to the show. So.
Oh, okay. Well, somebody called me.
I did see pictures though of people carrying signs. I don't know where it was, demanding an investigation into the investigation and demanding justice for the alleged victim. So.
Yeah. Well, looks to me like, and I believe, I didn't listen to it. I believe Sutter said they're just looking for some more money because they said this police officer was not stabbed, and he was. But the reality is they've already adjudicated the case.
Right.
They already did the case. This is civil matter. This is about money. It's not about the crime. It's about looking for money. Whether you agree with the justice or not, justice has been served because they had their due process on this issue. And they did. It's just like, look, how many of us don't believe that OJ was innocent? But he was found innocent, and you got to live with it. The justice system did it. There's no double jeopardy. But when he went to a civil trial, he lost. So, it is what it is. There's nothing is perfect in this world. And that goes for the justice system too. But the justice system does have due process. This is not something like the Malone case that was buried under the rug, that the taxpayers will be paying settlements now for who knows how long and how much, because you never ever hear anything about it. But they received due process. So to me, this is a fabricated thing, and thank you, Jeff, for clarifying that. The person who told me said they were picketing, about that. About they're looking for justice. So if they were there with signs saying that they supported them, well, I mean, to me, this is much to do about nothing. It's done. It's in the rearview mirror. He was a DA. He was obligated to prosecute that case anyway, whether you like or dislike the outcome. Let's look at issues here. When they're not talking about why they keep raising your taxes, why they don't build more affordable housing, why they are never transparent about anything. And then we see the New Bedford Police Department having somebody look over their department and suggest things to straighten it out, and they're running really well. But Fall River, crickets. And while we're on that, segues me into, I heard our illustrious state representative from the South End was on the radio preaching the party line for Paulie Pockets, saying that Fall River has done enough for affordable housing. Let the surrounding communities do something. Well, they are. They are. Rep. Didn't you at one time talk about your fielding calls from people in your district that can't afford the rents? All of a sudden, you got amnesia? You got amnesia because Paulie doesn't want affordable housing to be an issue? You really think that there's enough affordable housing in a city of 95,000 people when we're building 28 units or 40 units, and Somerset, a community of 18,000, is building 63 or 64 units? You really believe that? Maybe you should not represent the people in the South End. Maybe somebody should run against you, because obviously you're out of touch with the city of Fall River. We see what the rents are. Go back and look at the United States Census Bureau. Go back 3 or 4 years and see what the rents were in Fall River, and look at what they are now. We've had one of the greatest increases in rent in the country, probably percentage-wise. And you don't think a community that has an average per capita income of $28,000 and a household income of $49,000, which is well below the state average, has enough affordable housing for the people based on the inflation and all the other factors? I hope somebody runs against you, because you are a classic example. You guys sat on the rent control. Is that why you're saying it now? To justify sitting on a rent control? You never sit on your pay raises, do you?
Well, what's interesting is, and I like the fact that you kind of transitioned into this. Let's look at Alan Silvia. He's on a disability pension from the city of Fall River. Am I right or am I wrong?
That is correct.
Okay. He stays on that pension so he can collect the insurance program from the city of Fall River, as opposed to the crappy state employee insurance program that the state representatives and the elected officials get, which is the GIC, which we've had several mayors who've tried to put the GIC in place in Fall River, obviously failing miserably. And granted, he pays back the money from the pension to the pension system because of the money he gets as a state rep. Because the law says that as elected official, he gets to keep his salary from that position, which is a hell of a lot more than he's collecting from his pension.
Yeah, it's in the statute. You can read about it. He's on a disability pension, but let's be um, accurate as we can be, and I can be fairly accurate. He was on a disability pension from the city of Fall River. Therefore, he got his pension and his disability before he was a state rep.
Correct.
And therefore, he was on our health care. So he can
Right.
remain on our health care. And he chose to because our health care is better. And he does pay, as far as I know, I can check it, but to me, it's rough. I think he pays back his entire pension.
Right.
Because
And
that's how much how much money he makes as a state rep. So I don't want anybody saying that he's double dipping because he is complying with the law.
Right.
And he pays back his entire pension, and he's on the healthcare system because he was on that healthcare system, and he's entitled to be there because he was a city employee. And so, but that doesn't let, you know, it doesn't absolve the fact that how he can get on there and make a blatantly political statement on a local propaganda radio station to try to push affordable housing into the rear. Because here is another guy like Paulie Pockets that doesn't understand the difference between public housing, workforce housing, affordable housing, and market rate housing. All four of those entities are different.
That's right.
They have a different criteria. You cannot include. Yeah, Fall River has a much higher percentage of public housing, and people are still on the waiting list. You dummy. That proves there's a problem for affordable housing. What's the waiting list on the affordable housing? And you're saying there's not a problem? Let somebody else do it? Well, let somebody else be our state rep if you've got your head that far up your derriere.
What's interesting is, you know, that waiting list is 5 to 8 years. And I've witnessed a couple of those lotteries, as they're called, for an affordable unit, for an affordable rent unit in various developments. And there must be 2,000 or 3,000 people waiting for 1 or 2 apartments that are in the lottery to get 1 or 2 apartments.
Yeah,
that's a lot of people to be waiting in a tight area to see if they're lucky enough to get their name drawn.
Yeah, and if they're lucky enough to not have somebody with political connections looking for the apartment, because you and I both know, there has allegedly been a lot of shenanigans with those apartments. Because if you reach out to the right people, you know, miraculously you win the lottery.
Right.
But this is the whole thing. But to deny that we have an affordable, didn't you just send me an email about affordable housing being a problem?
Yep.
Yes, but guess what? You read an article. Was it in a Broadsider?
No.
The Commonwealth.
I think it was Commonwealth.
But yeah, because I got a Broadsider article and I got a Commonwealth article. They're talking about the affordable housing problem in the Massachusetts state, you know, nationwide. And we got a state rep that thinks Fall River's got enough affordable housing when we've got one of the lowest incomes in the state. So how can you're telling me 95,000 people in Fall River are all rich? They can all afford $2,000 a month rents? Rep? Who are you repping? Are you repping for the big money people? I don't know who you're repping for. You're not repping for the people. Because an individual that's making gross 28,000 and change is going to have a hard time living if he's got to pay nearly $2,000 a month for a studio apartment. That'll give them about $4,000 to pay everything else: food, gas, car insurance, whatever. $4,000 for the year. And that is a median income, which means there are a lot of people below that. And you have the temerity, the audacity to make a statement like that purely for political positioning for one of your friends. You don't belong in that seat.
Especially if you don't represent the people. As the clock is winding down here, I want to also bring up that there was an article in Commonwealth magazine, the Commonwealth Daily, that said the migrant shelter crisis is also a housing crisis.
Yes.
Because those people have to go somewhere. And there's already a housing crisis in Massachusetts, which I read the riot act to the governor's office yesterday, as you know.
Yes.
And I wasn't polite about it. Because the HDIP program has been so bastardized by the administrations in this city, including Paul Coogan, including Jazel Correa, including people before that. When the HDIP program came out, they started bastardizing it. It was supposed to be originally the waterfront. That was it, the waterfront. Then it got up to Highland Avenue. Then it went over to Pine Street. Then it went over to Eastern Avenue. Then it went up South Main Street. Then, might as well just make the whole city an HDIP zone, because it doesn't make any sense to be picking and choosing places just so that you can make your friends beneficial. Okay? And it's not fair to the people when you do that, because you're not putting HDIP zones in to create more affordable housing. You're putting HDIP zones in to create more market rate housing. And like Paulie said, high rents are beneficial to Fall River. He said that, right? You heard that?
Yes, he did. But I want you to tell the audience how well received your comments were, because they have tremendous sympathy for the poor people. They'll come down and pretend they do, but when you called up, didn't that individual tell you that you just didn't understand?
Right.
And your response was?
I got to be polite.
But you said fundamentally that no, that person did not understand. And you're right, because they don't care. The HDIP program, they went on record as saying that those units they were building under the HDIP, that even people with Section 8 vouchers couldn't afford the rents.
Exactly.
Am I not correct?
That's right. That's
okay.
Right.
And again,
I said that very clearly.
Yeah, but you know that. Look, you and I, CJ, are used to this. We know that's why we hate career politicians so much, because we have been dealing with them forever. We know how disingenuous and hypocritical they are. I called Auchincloss's office maybe a year ago or longer to complain about the affordable housing and how it's impacting retirees on fixed incomes. And I talked to one of his congressional aides, and I identified myself as an individual who represents the retirees in the city of Fall River. And I had some very accurate information about how much they're making for pensions. And he said, okay. And you know something? I haven't heard a word from Auchincloss, who's on here more often than most TV commercials. He's always on here blathering like, I'm going to have some kind of committee. I'm going to do this. And I'm down here listening to you. Yeah, he's listening to you. And then he walks away and he forgets everything you said, especially if he's going to do something uncomfortable against the politically connected people. So they're all, they're, like I said, if bullshit was bricks, they could all build chimneys to the moon and have bricks left over. We'd have a lot of chimneys going to the moon.
Well, what's interesting is that Alan represents the poorest part of the city of Fall River. Next to the Flint, the South End is the poorest part. It's also the most congested. It has the highest population of people who are below the median income. We have the highest populations that are on public assistance or some type of entitlement program. And he's supposed to represent them. But we already have too much affordable housing. Meanwhile, people in Fall River can't find a place to live. So I don't know who he's representing. I really don't. I'm not sure.
Yeah, well, Jeff just made a very good point. I still have a little difficulty because the lightness of the print reading this thing, but no, I agree. I'm moving the screen a little bit and I can get it because I guess the lighting. No, you're right, Jeff, but it shouldn't be us going to their neighborhood. His neighborhood people should go there. You know, he was on a radio and he said this, and people from the South End should go down there and question him because that statement was totally inappropriate. Because the reality is, if you have any homeless, you have a problem. In the United States of America, and I don't even know if we're the richest country anymore. Maybe China is. I don't know. But they continue to say we live in the richest, most prosperous country on the planet Earth. To having people sleeping in the streets and having people who were working people, bad enough when homeless people are out there. It's not a good thing. I don't believe that. I am a firm believer that most of those people have problems, and we should be dealing with the socio-economic problems and the psychological problems these people have as to why they're there. And we have the resources. But when working people become homeless, I walk my dog at BCC at least twice a day. There are homeless people living in the parking lots of BCC. A lot of people don't know this. BCC knows it, and they have a policy of just leaving them alone. I know there are 2 cars that are there every single day. And I see the man and the woman and their child there all the time. The child is playing with toys in the parking lot. They've got a cooler, I guess, to keep their stuff cold. And they're there every single day and night, especially at night. I don't know if they both work. I don't know. At least maybe the male works because I don't see his car there. But that car is there basically 24/7. And the 2 of them are there every evening. When I walk my dog in the evening, and if I go through when I walk through that part of the parking lot, I see them there. And I've seen that child playing out on a blacktop. That is unacceptable in the United States of America. When we're given some 2-bit comedian dictator in Ukraine billions and billions of dollars because he gave Hunter and Joe some money and he's got the goods on them, while we have people having to live in their cars, sleep on the streets, in the richest and most powerful country in the world, we've got our moral compass ass backwards. This is not Calcutta. This is the United States of America, and this should not be happening, and it's happening because our politicians don't give a shit. Simple.
And on that, we'll close. I want to thank you all for watching, and remember, stay safe, stay angry, and hold your politician accountable. Go shopping this weekend as it's tax-free, and we'll see you on Monday.